Welcome, everybody. We're going to drop the presentation in the chat in a few minutes, so you will have a link to that before the session's over. But if you want to just share in the chat your name, your position, and where you're coming to us from, and just so you know, we are recording this session, and we are going to get started because it is now 3:30. And so I'm only going to speak for a moment. This is going to be all Josh Barton. He's going to be sharing with you. He's the expert today, but Josh is joining us from the EC department. He's the IDA consultant for Assistive Technology, and he'll be leading this session. Myself, Jill Darrow, and Jen Graham will be manning the chat and admissions and things like that. But we're going to give Josh all of his time, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him now. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Vera. So as Vera said, I am Josh Barton. I am our state's IDEA consultant for assistive technology in our Office of Exceptional Children. And this afternoon's session is going to all be about artificial intelligence and how we could look at the utilization of AI as a form of assistive technology or AT. So let's get started. The goal for today is for participants to leave this session with an awareness of what AT is, the policies that impact assistive technology, and how artificial intelligence can function as assistive technology for some of our students with disabilities. Please note that the sharing of the following tools and resources does not constitute an endorsement from the Office of Exceptional Children and NCDPI, but they are here as consideration resources for you all to explore as part of your robust exploration of tools to support students. So I like to start my presentations with just kind of connecting some of the dots, connecting some of the pieces together. And this slide really does a good job of advancing some of those thought patterns. So it's really important that as we think about assistive technology and all of our work with students with disabilities, that we think about those evidence-based strategies. And here we're connecting that to the high leverage practices for students with disabilities. And then additionally, in our Office of Exceptional Children, all of the work that we do to support our students with disabilities looks to improve data across a variety of different data points, 18 different indicator areas that we track and monitor at the state level and at the individual school level or school system level. And this presentation today directly ties into our indicators that connect to graduation, assessment, preschool outcomes, post-school outcomes, and a variety of different things along those lines. And then additionally here, I've started to connect my work to our new state strategic plan and the pillars that Mo has shared out with the community at large at this point. And in particular, this presentation will highlight some resources that can prepare each student for the next phase in their life. And we're looking at leading through some transformative change. You know, AI is still an emerging system of support, and this presentation hopefully will get you all thinking more broadly about how it can help support our students with disabilities. So our outline for today will be as follows. We're going to start by looking at what exactly is assistive technology under the law and policies that are attached to that, laws that are attached to that. Then we'll look at how general technologies shift to become assistive technologies. And we're going to do all of that to lay that foundational groundwork to make sure everybody in this space has a common understanding as we transition into looking at how AI tools can meet that definition of AT. And then finally, we'll spend some time exploring some different examples of AI tools that support students across a variety of different academic and school-based activities. So, before diving into AI, let's ground ourselves in what AT is and how it fits the educational environment. AT is not new. What is new, though, is how powerful and accessible AI-based tools are becoming as supports for our students with disabilities. So AT is supported by multiple layers of law. First, we have some of our federal civil rights acts. We've got Section 504 and ADA, which ensure our civil rights protections, but also help support some of our students. With Section 504, it is important to note that students who do not qualify for special education under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, may still be eligible for assistive technology accommodations under Section 504 or Title II of ADA. A good example of this might be a student with a visual impairment who the IEP team determined does not qualify for special education and related services, but requires accommodations to access the general education curriculum. IDEA guarantees AT for eligible students with disabilities, and that's for any student with a disability. Additionally, as we're highlighting these pieces, I like to highlight the Every Student Succeeds Act. And I like to highlight that because it encourages our educational technology include assistive technology. And while ESSA requires that states and districts include AT in their education planning and investments, it is not specific or clearly defined with regards to what this must look like. And so for me, one of the things that is super important when we're thinking about assistive technology, we'll highlight this multiple times throughout, is that we make sure that we have really strong working relationships between our technology departments, our media coordinators, our instructional technologists, and our exceptional children staff, because that's really how we ensure that all students have access to the technology and the systems of operation within our school to allow for meaningful engagement. And then in North Carolina, we also we follow IDEA and also our state policies that are listed here are a direct mirror of some of those federal policies. And we'll look at that a little bit further here in just a minute. So this is the federal definition of an AT device. It includes anything that increases, maintains, or improves the functional capabilities of a student with a disability. It does not include medical devices that are surgically implanted, like cochlear implants, but it could include tools that work with those devices. And here it's really important that we think about just how broad this definition really is. Truly, an assistive technology device can be anything that is increasing, maintaining, or improving that student with a disability's ability to participate in their educational environment. As we look further into what IDEA says, it then goes on, and it's not just about the devices. It also talks about services that are provided to help the student use the device effectively. This includes evaluating needs, customizing tools, and training both the student and staff, as well as families sometimes. Some key points to highlight within this section is the functional evaluation occurring in the child's customary environment. It is important to consider all of the settings that the student would utilize the given piece of assistive technology to be able to ensure that the tool selected can work across all of those settings. A good example of this can be the consideration of communication supports. What all the student needs to effectively communicate in a small classroom environment would likely look different than in a gym or cafeteria, where it may be harder to hear the student and their communication attempts. As it continues to explain what assistive technology services can include, it also talks about the coordination with other interventions and training for families and professionals. If a student relies on assistive technology, the team supporting them needs to understand how to implement and sustain its use. When thinking about training or technical assistance for a child with a disability, or if appropriate, that child's family, this might be a good opportunity to look at and consider parent counseling and training as a related service as part of the student's IEP. This would help ensure that all individuals supporting the student know how to fully implement the given tool being used for the area of need. And that's especially important that we ensure that there's that continuity of support and understanding, not just for what the tool is being used for and how it's being integrated in that student's educational experience, but also how it is meaningfully supported and implemented fully across the student's experiences within the school environment. When we look at the North Carolina specific policies, this is where we start to recognize that, again, our North Carolina policies are in a direct alignment with what IDEA says. And this gives us a consistent framework across the state and supports all of our efforts in the decision-making process. Similarly, our policy around AT services also mirrors that federal language. And the next two slides are helpful for teams to reference when determining what those supports fall under AT, particularly during IEP meetings or eligibility discussions. All right, so when we start to think about assistive technology, it's really important to recognize that what is good for all may be required by some. And we hear this also when we talk about accessibility work. And there's a lot of overlaps between assistive technology and accessibility. But here in particular, what we're thinking about is that many tools that started out as assistive technology become universally adopted. So think of curb cuts or closed captions. Word prediction started as AT, but is now essentially everywhere in the systems we operate within. And what's assistive often becomes standard. So what other possible general supports can you think of that might also serve as AT for an individual with a disability? And this is a time for you all to do a little interactivity with me. So, I've provided a few examples here, but what other things can you think of that may just be universally available, but for some would function as a form of assistive technology? High contrast materials, absolutely. Large print, voice to text. Closed captioning. I love to encourage folks to explore closed captioning. It's something that can be integrated in pretty much everything we do and provides that meaningful interaction with text real time for students who may be struggling with print-based access. Touchscreen menus, absolutely. Yeah, we're seeing touchscreen everything at this point, basically. All right, so those are text to speech. Yeah, these are great examples for sure. And you guys can keep dropping stuff in the chat elevators. And we're going to keep going with the presentation, but I'll circle back to more of those as we continue. Thanks for sharing those things. All right, so this slide helps us clarify how we distinguish assistive technology from general tech or universal design for learning. And really what we do here is we push back to what that definition says. So a tool becomes assistive technology when it is necessary for a student's access or performance and their participation in that free and appropriate public education. So if a student with a disability would show a reduction with their ability to complete a task without a given tool, and remember when we're saying tool throughout this whole presentation, that's a loose reference to technologies that are dynamic and complex, and as well as post-it notes or pencil grips. So it can be lots of different things. Then it should be considered and documented in that IEP or 504 plan as a form of assistive technology. And so throughout the rest of this presentation, I want you to be thinking as we're talking about and exploring tools about pushing back to this. So even if something like the voice to text feature that is built into Google Docs, built into Microsoft Office tools at this point, even if all of our students have access to that, and we know every student in the classroom can reasonably get to it and use it on a routine basis, it becomes assistive technology if the student was to show reduction in skill if they lost access to it. So here again, we want to think about, as we're looking to support those students with assistive technology, how we may determine what the most appropriate form of AT would be for them. And so when thinking about supports for students, the QUIET, which stands for our Quality Indicators for Assistive Technology framework, reminds us to start with that least complex solution that works. And just because a tool is high tech doesn't mean it's best. In some instances, simpler tools can reduce barriers more effectively. And so our goal with all of these things as we explore and consider them as teams is to make sure we're not putting more barriers in place, but meeting that student right where they need to be to maximize their potential and their ability to participate. So now we're going to shift to artificial intelligence and what makes an AI tool assistive technology. And it's when that tool becomes functionally necessary for a student with a disability. And the intent, documentation, and alignment with the needs are key here. So when considering AI as a form of assistive technology, teams must ensure that decisions are data-driven, that they are aligned with the student's needs and goals, that it's linked to the legal definitions of assistive technology, and that the same process is used for any other AT tool should be applied when we're looking at artificial intelligence tools. And ultimately, we're focused on those outcomes, right? Our goal is to make sure that this is increasing their ability to participate or maintaining their ability to participate. AI tools must comply with privacy laws. This is something that's highlighted throughout all of our AI work in the state. But it's important here that we recognize that blanket bans on AI use, especially when it pertains to a student with a disability, cannot override the individualized decisions for students with disabilities. And their teams, those IEP teams or assistive technology teams, must work collaboratively to implement these tools safely and legally. And this is the first time I want to highlight that importance as we're beginning to look at and consider more complex tools, technology-based tools, that we're really integrating and working with cross departments within our school systems to ensure that tools we're looking to explore and consider, what steps need to be taken to help ensure that they can be integrated within the school system, and how can we do that in a timely manner? So in practice, the team doesn't just decide a tool is assistive technology. We need the data to make that decision. And this might come from informal classroom observations, documented task performance with and without a given tool, trial periods using frameworks like the SET framework, which stands for our student, environment, task, and tools, and include a feature matching process where we look to align the tools that we are considering with the elements of that student, environment, and task that we've already identified to find the tool that may maximize the potential of support for the area we're looking to achieve that support with in regards to assistive technology. And so the goal here is to confirm that the AI tool addresses a specific barrier and provides meaningful access. It should clearly relate to functional skills and be tied to an IEP goal or other area of need. And again, AI becomes assistive technology when it is functionally necessary. It's documented in that IEP or 504 plan. The student may require training, evaluations, and support to use it. And we would treat these tools the same way we would consider them or consider any other form of assistive technology. So how do we know when AI is needed as a form of assistive technology? And to determine when AI tools should be documented in the IEP, teams should follow the same thoughtful process used for any AT consideration. This includes reviewing the student's strengths and needs, current performance, barriers to access, and trying potential solutions. Some guiding questions to ask yourselves here are, is there a documented barrier to access, participation, or expression? And how might AI support that? Has the student trialed an AI tool, or does an AT evaluation need to be opened to trial an AI tool to see if it reduces the barrier? Does the AI tool increase, maintain, or improve the given area of concern? Is this tool required for the student to access or demonstrate learning? Is there enough data to justify the documentation in that student's IEP or 504 plan? IEP teams should document the rationale and ensure alignment with students' present levels and goals, just as we would any other tool or support that we're looking at for a student. So AI as AT in action. Here's a little case study example. So in this scenario, the team observed that a student struggled to generate written content. A trial with an AI writing tool significantly improved access to the curriculum. Data from classwork, teacher input, and the student self-assessment all supported this conclusion. The tool was then documented in the IEP under accommodations, AT services, and it was connected to an IEP goal for that student. So here in this example, we see that there's a documented area of concern. The team would likely be exploring options other than AI, but as part of that feature matching process, AI came to the top for this student and was the top tool the team wanted to explore. So they did some work with it, allowed the student to use it, took complex data, identified that it did improve that student's ability to produce written products, and then they looked at including it within that student's IEP paperwork. So this sets the stage for us to then look at exploring some of our examples for specific tools that can be used as assistive technology that are artificial intelligence. And as a reminder here, I just want to share again that these are not endorsements of any of these tools or products. These are just real world examples to help you envision how a given tool could potentially meet the needs of a student in a specific situation. So when we're starting to think about AI tools for writing support, these tools can support a student with written expression challenges, organizational challenges, or difficulties with transcription due to disabilities like dysgraphia, ADHD, physical impairments, or any other of the qualifying disability category. And some of the tools that we can look at using that are benefiting from artificial intelligence are things like voice notes, which lets our students dictate instead of typing. This is helpful for those with limited fine motor skills or who experience writing fatigue, because it removes a physical barrier to getting ideas on paper in an efficient manner. Additionally, tools like Grammarly that use AI to offer grammar, punctuation, clarity, and tone suggestions in real time can support students in their development and the structure of their writing, while also simultaneously reinforcing those proper writing conventions. And then we start to talk about tools that can support writing that are just directly integrated and built into some of those systems that our students are exposed to and using in real time. So things like Copilot in Microsoft Word 365 is an enabled AI tool that helps students brainstorm, organize ideas, and draft text based on prompts or outlines. And then additionally, the way Gemini integrates into Google Docs and Slides allows it to function as an AI assistant that can help generate ideas, summarize writing within a given piece of work, or even suggest phrasing alterations within it. And this can be a good fit for students needing scaffolding during drafting and editing processes. And it's important that as we think about these tools, also we are reflective on the AI guidance and the AI recommendations that we have released as a state to make sure that we're thinking about these as it's appropriate for a student based on their age and grade bands. Additionally, we want to make sure that as we're exploring these tools that we also are aware and cognizant of the individual AI tools recommendations for age limits for them. So Grammarly, I believe, recommends that nobody use it prior to the age of 16, I think last time I looked it up. So we want to make sure, again, as we're exploring these tools too, that we want to make sure that it's in compliance with those factors as well. So these tools, as we're looking at AI tools for reading comprehension, are set up to help our students understand or decode text. And including these things, these types of tools can support students with dyslexia or cognitive delays, specific learning disabilities in the area of reading, visual impairments, students with autism. And we've got a variety of different types of tools shared here on this screen. So Diffit here automatically updates reading passages to a student's reading level while preserving key concepts. So this is really useful for differentiated instruction and content accessibility. And this can be a way to take a given passage in a class and provide some UDL principles to it to differentiate while not losing any of the intent or any of the meaning within the content to help a student have a more meaningful engagement with a given piece of text. Talio extracts and reformats dense content into simplified formats, improving readability and comprehension for students with language processing issues. And I see that a comment just got dropped in the chat that Talio is currently conducting a free trial if a school district has around 50 students who would use it. So that's good to know. Thanks for sharing that. Humata allows for students to upload PDFs and receive summaries or ask questions about the text. It provides scaffolded support for complex reading as well. And then we have Speechify, which converts written content into natural sounding audio. And it supports students who benefit from auditory input, including those with dyslexia or visual impairments or other reading challenges. And Speechify is a really cool, it's a pretty expensive tool, but it's really cool because they've partnered up with celebrities as well and have a wide array of different voices available. So you can have content read to you as if it's Gwyneth Paltrow. You can have Snoop Dogg read stuff to you. There are lots of different options within Speechify. One tool that I didn't get to add to this slide that I just want to mention is that now built into the Chrome browser within their reading simplification process. So you can go into reading mode, which extracts all of the ads and other distracting elements. It now also has a read aloud feature. So any of our systems that are using Chromebooks and the Chrome browser, that's something directly integrated in that's relying on AI to help support that read aloud feature for students or for anybody that might benefit from it. Moving right along, we're going to start to talk about tools that are supporting executive functioning. And these may be beneficial for students with ADHD or broader executive functioning challenges, or even just those that have difficulty managing tasks independently. The first example here we have is B Computer, and it helps students generate personalized to-do lists, summaries, and provides AI-powered guidance for completing tasks or staying organized. That's a really great piece because oftentimes where we see some roadblocks for our students with the disabilities is in breaking down those large, complex pieces of work that they're tasked with, particularly as we advance in grades, into those small actionable steps. And so B Computer can help take that big concept and chunk it down for a student to do independently. The next tool we highlight here is Goblin Tools, and it offers a suite of executive function supports. So it has the ability to break tasks down into individual steps. It suggests timelines, checks the tone of written messages, and offers a visual timer directly embedded in it. And it was specifically designed with neurodivergent users in mind. So think about our students with autism in particular there with Goblin Tools. And as we teach our students to do these types of things independently, it will also help our staff in that it can offset some of the work that they've previously been doing while also empowering that student's independence. And then lastly here, we highlight Google Gemini again. And really any of the large language models can be used in the same fashion where it can help students in setting goals, managing their calendars, and even summarizing next steps, both to support planning, but also their follow through. And really, as we're thinking about these tools too, these are all things that can help in that post-secondary outcomes aspect. So as our students are transitioning out of our K-12, K-13 environments into the real world of employment or post-secondary education, helping these students understand how to access these resources and increase their independence with setting calendar reminders or planning how they're going to follow through and making sure that they're completing the milestones that they need to is where we really start to see that we maximize that potential and that overall success for our students as a whole. This next section of tools is looking at note-taking and supporting note-taking specifically across all settings. And so these tools can be useful for students with processing speed issues, students who struggle with auditory processing or auditory memory, and those also with limited attention spans during lectures. And the first one is Otter.ai, and it provides live transcription of spoken language, helping students capture and review classroom content. And Otter is a really powerful tool in the way that it functions and can participate in regards to selecting and annotating content as well. The next is Genio, and it was formerly known as Glean. And it was specifically designed for educational settings. And where it really excels is that it allows the students to organize their lecture recordings. So while it is actively recording a live session and transcribing it, students have the ability to organize elements within that live transcription in real time. They can tag key points, and they can even go back after the fact and use the notes that were captured, the key elements they highlighted and flagged in their review process, and develop their own quizzes to study from. Glean or Genio has the ability also for them to go back and watch. So if it's a digital session that they're participating in, they can simultaneously see the presentation and the recording of that presentation and the transcript for it all at the same time as well, so that they can go back and find some of those key elements, those key points to highlight that they potentially may have missed as they were trying to keep up with it all real time. The next two options here, the iFlyTech and the PlodNote, these are smart recorders. So they convert spoken content into text. They provide summaries and even visual mind maps using artificial intelligence. And PlodNote in particular is actually a tool that's intended to be able to connect right onto the back of a smartphone even. And this is an emerging area for sure, and that we're seeing more and more competition in the market supporting that specific type of support. So it's something that kind of is always on them, always available to record with some simple interactions. And then the last tool that we highlight on this slide here is Messenger Pigeon. And it again offers transcription and note tagging and an AI study assistant to help students summarize and review any of the information in an efficient and meaningful way to them. All of these tools adapt to the student as they're using them and learn from those interactions often as well. Next up, we're going to spend just a little bit of time looking at tools that can support communication and language development for students. And these will help support our students who are non-speaking in a traditional communication sense or minimally verbal, or who have expressive and receptive language needs. And we've got things like those tools that have built-in predictive AAC apps. And so here are just a couple of examples, Cough Drop and ProLoquo to Go. And both of these provide customizable communication boards with AI-enhanced phrase prediction. And it's really useful. They can be really useful for building language independence. So they rely on learning those communication patterns over time and based their predictive algorithm on what the student may be attempting to communicate off of the patterns that are established over those communicative attempts in time. So they can really enhance that fluency and create a reduction in effort by anticipating where that communication is going to allow the student to participate even more efficiently in their communicative attempts. And then the next example here we have are context-specific vocabulary generators. These are some tools that use AI to adapt vocabulary sets to classroom topics or routines, supporting comprehension and expressive language. One example here for this would be Predictable by Therapy Box. It is a text-based AAC app that uses smart word prediction and learns from all of the previous messages. It includes phrase banks that can be tailored to specific environments or topics. So during a science lesson, for example, it can prioritize words like experiment, observe, or hypothesis if those have been used before or programmed for the activity. Additionally, this is a place where you can, again, look to the utilization of some of the large language models, such as ChatGPT, and then the custom GPTs that you can build out within those platforms, which can then be used to model sentence construction, generate conversational prompts, or even create visual symbol supports, especially when they've been tailored to an individual student's needs. And really, when we think about some of those tools as well, that's a great reference point for students using other forms of augmentative and alternative communication systems to be able to engage and participate in other classroom environments where they may not have been able to as independently participate. So a good example here would be a student using a communication device being able to fully participate in a high school art class where they, similar to their peers, could develop a specific piece of art off of a specific artist's style using their AAC device to prompt the large language model to generate that output for them. So the student could say, I need a drawing of a tiger in the form of Van Gogh's pointillism. And those large language models would then be able to produce a highly individualized piece of art for that student. And oftentimes those students may struggle with being able to produce things of that nature independently due to other motor planning challenges and things of that nature. So some really great opportunity there, not only to use AI to support the students through that communication app, but also to support the use of communication apps to enhance and improve participation across domains and environments. As we continue to move on, we want to think about AI tools that can help support access and participation. And so these tools in particular are going to look at increasing those opportunities for inclusion of students with sensory or physical impairments and communication-related disabilities. So things like real-time captioning, which is built into Google Slides, and now in the Chrome browser within the accessibility features, there's real-time captioning there as well that can be enabled for any audio content that's being played within the browser. Additionally, built into the Microsoft Slides, PowerPoint feature there is a live captioning. One of the really cool things and one of the areas that Microsoft really excels with their PowerPoint captioning is that in a diverse setting, you can actually share individual links that students or adults could access that will even provide real-time translation in the captions for the speaker that's presenting. So a really great way to expand those opportunities for participation and potentially support some of our multilingual learners as well in real time. We also have started to see real increase in the area of voice and eye control across our systems that we see within our school environments. So tools like voice control in iOS and the ability to do some eye tracking now in iOS, Google's Voice Access and Google Look to Speak allow students with motor impairments to control devices through voice or eye movements. And these areas of improvement are really only available because of artificial intelligence. Historically, these required very specific and very sophisticated equipment for students to have this type of access and participation. But because it's being integrated now and is more universally available, it's just opening up those opportunities for more and more students who previously may not have been able to access those complicated systems for a variety of reasons. We also have things like audio filters like Crisp.ai or Tiled that are able to filter out background noise to aid students with sensory sensitivities or auditory processing disorders. And then the final section here is AI object and image recognition. And these are things like Seeing AI or Be My Eyes, which use smartphone cameras to describe surroundings, read text, or even identify people. And these were particularly designed and engineered for helping students or individuals with visual impairments navigate their environments, but they can be helpful for anybody that has a print-based disability as well, because of its ability to benefit from that AI to decipher text and read it aloud. With Seeing AI, it can even decipher handwritten text, including my own, which is really bad and hard to read, and read it aloud. So it just allows for even more meaningful engagement by our students across domains and across settings. So when we're thinking about implementing any AT, we want to make sure, and including AI-based tools, we want to make sure that we remember that collaboration is essential here. It is important and it is imperative that we involve our technology staff to ensure compatibility with school systems and across our school domains and prioritize privacy and security along the way. We want to make sure that we're building capacity within our teams to support the long-term use of these resources, and that it is important to note that that according to the U.S. Department of Education, that technology departments and staff are not the ones making the final determinations about tools that can be used by a student with a disability as assistive technology. Instead, that is the responsibility of the student's IEP team. However, I want to say again after that it is essential that that technology department, your school-based technology teams and staff, are involved throughout the process and prior to any final determinations about AT to ensure that the tool will be able to be implemented in a timely manner and function within the school's broader systems of operation with little or no challenges whenever possible. So as we look to wrap up, we are running ahead of schedule a little bit here. I want to make sure that we think back to what we've talked about today and remember that AI tools can absolutely function as assistive technology, but they can only do that when they are tied to a student's individualized needs. If you're looking for next steps, these are some resources you can check out. I provide and maintain an AT Canvas hub. Within that, I try to maintain a list of AT tools across different domains that teams could consider as they're exploring those areas of support for students. Additionally, NCATP, which stands for our North Carolina Assistive Technology Program, offers lending libraries across our state. So NCATP is housed within the Department of Health and Human Services, and they function in close partnership with me to help ensure that all of our school-based supports are able to be functioning at a high level, and they provide a variety of different supports in addition to their lending libraries. But the lending library is a really great way to get your hands on assistive technology, to trial it, explore it, collect that data, and determine how it may be able to support and improve a student's ability to have access to FAPE. The next resource here is CITL. And specifically CITL's training tools on AI. So CITL is one of our nationally funded centers that is specifically looking at supporting individuals and staff who are working with individuals with disabilities, and with a specific focus area on understanding AI and how AI can help support those individuals and offset some of our staff demands and workloads. And then the last resource here is the SITES framework from CAST, and it has a broader understanding of school-based technology, AI, and assistive technology resources as a whole. And I saw in the chat a question just come through asking if we can share a copy of these resources. And the link that was provided earlier in the presentation will actually take you to this slide deck, and I'll update all of these to make sure they're hyperlinks. For some reason, they didn't hold prior to sharing. So you'll be able to come back into this presentation and click on these to get to the various pieces. All right, so let's pause here for some questions. I want to encourage folks at this time that you can feel free to come off mute and ask questions that you may have. You're also welcome to drop questions in the chat. And know that if I don't get to everything, you're welcome to email me. I was saying to one of my colleagues in this meeting this afternoon that I love getting to talk to our school-based staff. So I'm happy to set up virtual meetings and have conversations around assistive technology for sure, but let's pause and see if there's any questions. Vicky, go ahead. You can put it in the chat or come off mute, either way.
Hey, Josh, thanks for doing this. So I guess my question is about funding. So let's say you go through this procedure and you do everything correctly, and you want to gather the data to show that this is a needed tool.
Yeah.
How do you get access to that tool to trial it? And then also, like, let's say you do have the data and it is tied to the student's individual need. Is the school then provided, will they be required to then fund that?
Great questions, Vicky. So let's break that into a few different pieces. So the first piece around trialing and getting access to tools. Many of the tools that I highlighted today offer free or freemium versions of them that would allow for some individual exploration with students to do that trialing piece. Additionally, my experience thus far with many of these tools, things like Speechify in particular, is that if we reach out directly to those companies, they're really interested in partnering with and exploring how some of these resources can be leveraged as a form of assistive technology in particular, because again, many of these weren't necessarily initially developed to function in that capacity. And so being able to collect some feedback from users, from school-based staff is something that a lot of these folks are always looking forward to having that opportunity to do. Additionally, things like NCATP are looking to expand their lending libraries to include technologies of this nature. And routinely, they look for feedback from our schools to expand what types of resources they have available. All right, so on to the second piece around funding. So to answer that first part as to if it was determined and included in the student's IEP, is the school then responsible for funding of that device? And the answer to that question is that ultimately, yes, the school system could be the financially responsible party for a given AT solution for a student. But our myths and facts are clear in that it is not only the school's responsibility. The school is one option within that continuum, but some of our school systems are working in partnership with the families to explore Medicaid and private insurance to cover the cost of assistive technology solutions. But then additionally, within the state of North Carolina, there are some specific funding avenues that can be pursued with EC leadership around risk pool funds and special targeted other special targeted funds that can be explored to help support students. Those things really have to go through EC leadership, and they work closely with our fiscal monitors to make those determinations. And with both of those funding sources, usually the PSU has to demonstrate that they're planning to do the acquisition, planning to use the tool regardless of if they get approved or not, first, to be able to demonstrate that it's not just reliant on that funding for whether or not the student gets the supports they need. And then the final thing is that we are hopefully going to be doing the grant process this year for some special targeted grants. And within that, if it gets approved by the State Board of Education and other leadership entities within the Department of Public Instruction, assistive technology devices, training, support, et cetera, can be included as part of that competitive grant application process. So again, you'd want to talk with your EC leadership there locally to make sure that as those updates are coming out to them through their weekly communications, that they are considering or exploring the consideration of applying for money to support assistive technology needs as well. Hopefully that answers your question, Vicki. what other questions do people have? All right, well, questions can keep popping in, but I'm going to go ahead and throw this on to the next page. Yeah, Vicki, you're welcome to come off and ask another question. This here is just an opportunity for me to get feedback from you all. So you can scan that QR code, but I will also drop, I will also drop this link in the chat as well so that you guys have it for access purposes. All right, so let's see what other questions we got. Let's see. Charmaine, would it be possible to provide a certificate or proof of attendance for this webinar that I can present to my school district in order to receive CEs? I don't know how digital. Yes, Vera, go ahead.
I was just coming off mute to say that we have our own feedback form if somebody wants to do it as well, and they will get a certificate of attendance unless you do that as well.
I usually do CEUs as well, Vera, but I mean, if you've got a system in place, I'll let you do the CEUs for this for sure.
Okay, well, it's up to you. I didn't want to confuse it with putting a second survey in there, but you want me to drop it, or do you want to just do yours?
Let's do your survey because you can share the results. So disregard this survey, folks. We're going to use Vera's survey. And then that way you've got the results since I did this in partnership with you, and I know you'll share stuff with me.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Vera.
Sorry, I forgot to discuss that with you earlier.
No worries. All right, so I have a question regarding the documentation of the accommodation after it is determined that AI tool is beneficial for the student. Since in the accommodations we have been advised to be more general and share the need, and AI is an umbrella term, do you advise we use more of the headings the various tools were under? So great question there, Monica. So we would want to speak to kind of a broad description of what the tool specifically is supporting. And you could use some broader terms, some of the umbrella type terms that I used for the specific area of support. With this particular, if the team had really narrowed it down to an AI specific resource that's only like that AI support is going to be the effective tool for that student, I think it would be okay to say an AI support tool, or a support tool that meets these needs that is enhanced by artificial intelligence would probably be how I would look to describe that. Because ultimately, like you said, AI is kind of vast and all-encompassing, so we're not speaking to a specific product at that point. So I would look to describe what the tool is going to do and then add that component of that specific type of tool is supported by an artificial intelligence component. That should help narrow that focus down. Do I have any resources specifically geared towards students who use ASL and are deaf, hard of hearing? So, Jennifer, I will get back to you on that. I didn't include anything in particular here, and that is definitely an emerging area where we're seeing some support mechanisms, particularly in the form of ASL through AI components. But really with that, as we get into that more nuanced area, I'd like to really incorporate Antoine Campbell, who's our consultant for sign language interpreters, and a couple of our consultants for deaf and hard of hearing, just to get them to also weigh in on some of the pros and cons to some of those resources that are available within that continuum. If you don't mind emailing me, and I'll hear my contact information on the screen now, that would be great and would allow for me to get that broader integration with the rest of my team to make sure we maximize answering your question. All right, Vicki, we're back to you.
Okay, I'm just trying to wrap my head around what this would look like in practice, and I guess I'm just confused about like the order that things happen in, the time frame for certain things to occur. And I can give you can I give you a couple of real life examples and you could just pick one, and would you be able to just kind of give me like a case study of like what, how you would do this, what data you would gather, what the time frame would be, who would do what in the team and all that? So I
was going to say, my answer to that, Vicki, is go ahead and throw one at me. We'll see how it goes. And then if nothing else, you and I can set up another meeting to talk through your specific use cases or concerns.
Well, the first one is really short. So I had a student last year that has executive functioning, struggles with handwriting, and sensory, and is a high school future ready student. And I had wanted to use Notebook LM with that student as a sort of accommodation for note taking and things like that. And I couldn't get anywhere because the technology department just said, well, that's blocked for students. And I couldn't get any backup in the EC department. They're like, well, I guess it's blocked. So that's open now, so I want to use it. But my other example is I've been for years now I have a student that has a speech impairment. He has a palate deformity, and so his speech is as good as it's ever going to get. And he also struggles with handwriting, and I would like him to use speech to text, but he cannot use like a standard speech to text program. He's going to have something that is going to learn his speech patterns. And I haven't gotten anywhere with that one either.
So that one, Vicki, let's circle back to, and you can email, I mean, you know how to get in touch with me.
Yeah.
Shoot me an email and we can definitely set up a meeting and talk about that one a little bit further. In regards to your first one, where there were some roadblocks from the school level in regards to restrictions of access and things of that nature, those are opportunities where I am always happy to jump in a virtual meeting with technology staff, with EC leadership. Really the best path for that would be for probably me and you to meet first, and then loop in EC leadership, and then expand that circle a little bit further to help ensure that we have that consistent understanding of what the law and regulations say as it relates to this topic. And then also why potentially we need to explore an AI-based solution versus other tools and resources that may already be available. So when we're thinking about like executive functioning and supporting a student in that area, other things that we would want to make sure we have data to demonstrate that we've at least explored and trialed would be things like graphic organizers and resources of that nature. And it is through that trialing process and through that data collection of the trialing that we can then begin to differentiate why, a low-tech graphic organizer isn't as successful in supporting the student and improving their access and participation as something like Notebook LM would be. And so helping to have, that comprehensive, showing that ability that we've used something like SET or the WADI tools, the Wisconsin Assistive Technology Initiative resources, to show that we've used a framework for that consideration, we've done that feature matching, and here's the data and why we ultimately have, as a team, decided. But like I said in this presentation, the Office of Special Education at the federal level is really clear in their myths and facts to specifically speak to this matter in particular, that decisions around assistive technology solutions for a student are the decision of that IEP team and not the decision of other entities within the school system. And I think this is one of those areas where we just need to tread cautiously as we're having those conversations and work on making sure prior to even getting to those conversations that we've really fostered that relationship, that interconnectivity across departments, so that we have an understanding that, when we're coming with this, it's not just because it's the newest, fanciest thing that we've heard about, but it is used specifically to target and address a very specific nuanced need for a given student. Where I had the most success when I was in district with assistive technology was when I was in a district where I was almost part of their technology team, and was able to support their work, and they supported my work. And then when I came to things that were a little more nuanced, a little more complex, they were super willing to meet me where we needed to be in troubleshooting as we needed to go along the way.
I guess I just see that's my question about the time frame one, because I do see a lot of we'll just waste time. Meanwhile, the student, is a senior in high school. We don't have time to waste. Also, with the data collection, I mean, I could see the pushback being well, we need more data, or we need, a specific type of data. And so is there any kind of guidance around how to gather the data, how they're going to want to see the data, things like that?
So I've not been specifically involved in any of those conversations at the local level yet to be able to answer that with very high level of specificity. But generally speaking, when we're looking at any AT processes, that data collection can be done as part of that set framework process. When we're trialing equipment as part of an AT evaluation, generally we're looking for 4 to 6 weeks of data collection. Is usually kind of a good threshold for being able to have that robust argument to say, we've tried this, we've fully explored it. Being able to document and demonstrate too that training was provided for the student as well as the staff can help with those conversations and arguments as well, because then you're able to fully demonstrate, like, we didn't just land on this because it was the easiest to implement, but we landed on this because it supported the student where the support was needed. So there's not necessarily a right or wrong way to do any of that, but
no, that answers my question. Okay, one more question. We have the greatest AT team, of course, but one thing I've run into is resistance to purchasing things that are subscription based, and a preference for purchasing physical items. And since the students I work with tend to be older, oftentimes they don't need the Switch toy. They need a subscription to, Good Notes or whatever the thing is. Have you run into that, and how do you work around that?
There's not any easy workarounds for that. And a big part of that is that most systems within the educational environment are moving to more of subscription-based services as opposed to standalone tools. We see that across all things. Some of our dedicated communication apps on the iPads recently have shifted over to more of a subscription model. And so there's not an easy answer to that. And that's when being creative about some of the funding options can really help offset some of those concerns, some of those demands. And particularly as we're thinking about students in that post-secondary, that transitionary age range, that's where looking to connect them up with things like Voc Rehab and other entities of that nature that will continue to provide supports after they've graduated and left our systems of operation can also help, because they can also then assist in the acquisition of support mechanisms in the form of assistive technology. So being really proactive about getting students permission signed and connected up with those other entities that are designed to support them past graduation is really crucial.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, that's what I've got. I will stay on until 4:30 hits. Feel free to continue to drop questions in the chat. Come off mute. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Like I said, please don't hesitate to reach out. I love getting to talk about all forms of assistive technology. Vera can attest that I also love to get to talk about artificial intelligence. So I am here for you.
Thank you so much, Josh. I really appreciate it.
Fantastic. Ashley, thanks for sending that email. I'll get back to you in a timely manner, I'm sure.
Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great afternoon. I'm going to go ahead and